Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the annual Distinguished Faculty Awards for Distinction in Teaching and Distinction in Mentoring. I'm Steve Hetz. I'm a professor in the Department of Radiology and one of the interventional neuroradiologists, but I'm hosting today in my capacity as the vice chair of the Committee on Academic Personnel for the Academic Senate. And one of our fun duties is to participate in organizing and selecting faculty who really represent the best UCSF has to offer. And so I wanted to welcome you to this online celebration. We have some wonderful faculty members to profile today and to congratulate for their dedication to their art and to the institution and to their learners. So without further ado, maybe we can go to the next slide. Great. So we're going to start out with the Distinction in Teaching Award today. It's the oldest award given at UCSF, and it started in 1958. It recognizes faculty to student or faculty to resident teaching efforts. And there are two categories for nomination. One for faculty who've been at UCSF for under 5 years, and one for faculty who've been at UCSF for over 5 years. The award selection committee includes 4 full professors, 1 from each school, 4 students, 1 from each school, and was chaired this year by Frank Soka, who's a professor of bioengineering, who is one of the members of CAP. Questions were provided by the Academic Senate's Committee on Educational Policy. Next slide. So this year's Distinction in Teaching Award for a faculty who has been at UCSF for fewer than 5 years goes to Andrew Penn, who is a Health Sciences Associate Clinical Professor in the Department of Community Health Systems in the School of Nursing. And Mr. Penn is based at the VA Medical Center in San Francisco. Next slide, Andrew. Congratulations.
Thank you. Let me get my slides up here. Well, thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate the honor of being nominated for this award. Before I came to UCSF, I had to take a really long walk. I went for 250 miles along the John Muir Trail. I was at sort of a crossroads of my career, and I decided that it was when I came off that trail that it was time to make a change. And so that change for me was to come full-time to UCSF, where I had done some part-time teaching and volunteer teaching for a long time prior to that. You know, there's a lot of people I could certainly thank for being here, and since this is probably the closest I'm ever going to come to getting to win an Academy Award, I'm going to take a moment to appreciate some of whom are here today. You know, first of all, I'd of course like to thank my first teachers, who are my parents. My father, Eric, who's an engineer by training, who often taught me how things worked in the world, often by sketching something out on the back of an envelope, which probably sowed the seed for my love of a good PowerPoint illustration. And my mother, Patricia, who's a social worker and psychotherapist by training, who often taught me how people worked, often by asking me to look inside myself. And I certainly, of course, want to thank my wife, Kate, who encouraged me to take the leap into full-time teaching, encouraging me to show up as myself, and saying that if I were to do that, then I would be appreciated for who I was, which I'm very grateful for that. And I also want to thank my kiddo, Rowan, who has endured what is probably the occupational hazard of just about any teacher's kid, which is a much longer explanation than you actually wanted to a simple question, which I was sometimes ribbed as giving the 20-paragraph explanation. Other people that I really want to thank here, a couple of people that taught me when I was early on in my training, Ralph Quinn at UC Santa Cruz, who taught me that teaching could be fun, but also profoundly enjoyable. And my late mentor and good friend, Pavel Mahotka, who taught me to really look hard at the world and to really take in things deeply. When I think sometimes what would a professor look like, I think of Pavel. And I also want to appreciate a good friend and former roommate, UCSF physical therapist, Paul Vaughn, who before I ever went into nursing would explain things like congestive heart failure to me in a way using metaphors and images that I could understand. When I did come to school, I was the beneficiary of many wonderful teachers. Some of my clinical professors were Jerry Collins Bride, Barbara Burgle, and of course, Matt Tierney was a mentor to me then and is a mentor to me now. I would really be remiss if I didn't appreciate my nominator, Beth Phoenix, who has really nudged my career in incredible directions from the time I was a student with her, because it's true, when UCSF really does stand for you can stay forever. So I trained here and I work here and I'm honored to get to teach here. I really appreciate all the people who signed letters of encouragement to my nomination. Rob Daroff and Gabby Jacobs at the San Francisco VA, and some of my former students who are here today joining me in this fantastic honor. So I really appreciate each and every one of you. And I just want to really point out that, I love this quote from Ram Dass, that we are all just walking each other home. I just see so many people on here who encourage me to teach. Marianne Neihart, who was somebody who nudged me, maybe shoved me into teaching, which was an excellent choice on her part. The folks at the Band Lab, where I get to do research on the next generation of psychiatric therapies, and my colleagues at Psych Congress, Chuck Raison, Vlad Malitek, Rakesh and Sandra Jain, who really showed me how to go next level. And of course, all the colleagues that I get to teach within the School of Nursing, and particularly in the Psych NP department. I'm very fortunate to have such a robust group of colleagues. So thank you for that. And really, it's the students, which is why we're here. And I am deeply appreciative for the way that the students not only challenge us, but also call on us as learners and teachers, because really the distinction is somewhat arbitrary. I think all learners are teachers, and all teachers have to be learners as well. And I'm fortunate to get to work with some of the best students that I could ever imagine, and some of them are here on this slide. So thank you. That's who I'd like to appreciate here.
Thank you, Andrew. That was a lovely talk, and we'll go to the questions, which I think are on the next slide. So just a couple of them, and I'll ask one at a time, and feel free to answer. So the first one is, what do you think has been the biggest change in the learning climate in the past decade?
Well, Steve, there was a time when the authority of a professor was thought to be kind of absolute. And, at best, a good professor challenged a student to change their thinking. But at worst, this power of knowledge was used to invoke fear or intimidate, or even worse, to humiliate people. And students once came to universities to gain a kind of privileged knowledge, but that knowledge was really held within tight confines. And there was a correct way of thinking and an incorrect way of thinking. And if you wanted to graduate, you better adopt the thinking that your professors were having. And so power in the form of knowledge was really centralized in a few places and only among a few people. And now students and the culture at large are rightly critiquing all the places where power resides, including within academia. And this is happening well before the murder of George Floyd a year ago today, but that event catalyzed a long overdue reckoning. Systems that maintain these hegemonies are being dismantled, and to be a teacher in this environment can be disorienting. Sometimes we find ourselves being on the defensive in response to these critiques. But what's really being introduced into teaching, as I see it, is the intersection of many perspectives and voices that have been traditionally left out of the conversation. And I think this is a good thing. Now, cynics may say that this is that we live in a post-truth world. And I think alternative facts are kind of intellectual nihilism. They're not facts. Facts continue to exist, I'm pleased to say. And it's our job as teachers, I think, to give students these foundations so they can begin to ask these difficult questions and learn to uncover and interpret the world for themselves. Now, will learners make mistakes? Of course, that's the point of learning, is to be able to correct their mistakes. And will teachers make mistakes? Well, of course, because despite their positions, they're still learners too. It's my hope that we can approach these shortcomings of others with a modicum of grace, and that when harm is done through our errors, that we can do we'll do all we can to make it right again. But in a world that feels increasingly polarized, we can't see different viewpoints we can't see the different viewpoints that our learners bring into the classroom as a threat, especially when they're in conflict with our own worldview. Because I ask my colleagues, how can we expect our students to tolerate being uncomfortable as learners if we as teachers are unwilling to do the same? So that's why I'm really appreciative to my students and to my colleagues for challenging me, for giving me the opportunity to stay humble, but most importantly, to stay curious, because I think nurturing curiosity above all is at the heart of what we do as teachers.
Really well said. Certainly being in the university, the modern university, recognizes the universe of different viewpoints, just not the universe of knowledge. And so I think your words are very well founded. So the second question was, what do you see as your strengths in becoming a distinguished teacher, and what do you continue to work on to improve your teaching further?
Well, mostly what I try to do is to make learning relevant and enjoyable. It doesn't mean it'll be easy. In fact, I think there's kind of a deep pleasure when you finally get something that's complicated, when you finally feel a certain degree of mastery. I love to see that moment where things click for a student. Somebody who's in my psychopharmacology class that reflects that as a staff nurse, they've been giving a medication for years, but it was really only upon learning the receptor pharmacology of the drug that they realized why we use that medication. I find that to be extremely gratifying. I love when students find their way into an important question. One of the great opportunities I was given as a student and now as a faculty of this university is to be part of this incredible mycelial network of people, ideas, resources, knowledge that exist here. Sometimes, frankly, it's a bit overwhelming and you need a guide, as people have guided me. And one of the things that I enjoy most is getting to the connection between two people that have similar interests but maybe don't know each other, and send an email of introduction between a student and a faculty member, or between a couple of faculty members. That's a really fun use of my privilege as a professor. And I also want to keep learning from my students and understanding how they learn. With the pandemic, we've had to get creative about how we teach, not only lecture classes, but also how we teach patient care. I've seen my students and residents pivot effortlessly to telehealth with an ease that frankly makes some of their elders a little envious. But I think that really the best way that I can improve as a teacher is to continue to learn from everyone and everything around me. One of the things I love about psychiatry and I love about nursing is that they are both professions where science intersects a deep understanding of our common humanity. And as such, there's a lot that I can learn from, whether it's a novel, a film, or a scientific paper. So that's how I think about teaching.
Yeah, we all remain students as teachers, and there are always opportunities to grow. So I think, again, we really appreciate all your diligent work. And, on that note, now we have a little time to hear from a few of your nominators and colleagues. So I think if I have this in the right order, Beth Phoenix. Beth, did you want to say something?
Yes, I would like to say something. And, I think, just from Andrew's remarks today, you can see what makes him such a great teacher. And I'm really pleased to see his talent and his commitment as an educator recognized. I think Andrew's combination of creativity and erudition really makes content come alive for learners. And I'd like to invite all of you to check out some of the YouTube video modules that Andrew created for a class that we teach together that's focused on differential diagnosis of psychotic disorders using Emperor Norton as a case study. As an example. So I think probably if you just go to YouTube and Google Emperor Norton psychotic disorders, you can see them. But I mean, this is an example of, I think Andrew's really, in a different world, Andrew could have been an entertainer. And I think you can kind of see that in some of his teaching products. Andrew's also really naturally gifted as a clinical teacher, modeling an empathic communication style and a collaborative approach with both patients and students, which I think is, which I think is a way in which he's really been able to deeply touch so many of the learners that he's worked with. So Andrew and I will be teaching together again in the fall, and I can't wait to see what he comes up with. So congratulations, Andrew, much, much deserved.
I brought the Emperor along with us.
And any San Francisco conversation which can bring up Emperor Norton is a conversation well had. So thank you, Beth. Thank you,
Well,
Andrew.
For those who are not familiar, Emperor Norton was a gold rush eccentric who declared himself Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico in 1859, and then proceeded to walk the streets, inspecting his subjects and his fair city, and issuing proclamations. And not only was he tolerated, he was celebrated. And so when I just going to do this case study on Emperor Norton, I thought I had a brainstorm moment where I thought, I could do it in character. And so Emperor Norton has joined the faculty of UCSF. So thank you, Beth. That was
fantastic.
Lovely to hear.
I think next we have Vanessa Miller and Diane Kim, who are a current School of Nursing student and an alumna. I don't know if you wanted to present together or sort of one after the other, but listed on the agenda, you are linked.
Okay, I think we'll go one after the other. And my name is Vanessa Miller, and I know I have limited time, so I don't want to ramble, but I'd like to share with you a few thoughts from my nomination of Professor Penn. I'm a second-year postmaster's mental health nurse practitioner student. And although UCSF has many fine students, I have found that none of them immerse themselves in their teaching role as completely as Professor Penn. His knowledge of course content and subject area cannot be questioned. He's extremely knowledgeable. But there are many teachers who have equal knowledge, but they are unable to share this knowledge with students in a way that is totally engaging and helps students to understand and remember the course content, like we remember an Academy Award-winning movie. Learning from Professor Penn's tutelage is totally enjoyable. Attending his class is something that I anticipate, despite a packed and grueling schedule consisting of classes, employment, and internship. Professor Penn brings to life the theoretical concepts as well as the social context of the classes he teaches. He has the ability to bring relevance to his teaching for students and society. He understands the needs of the profession. Therefore, he is best positioned to prepare students to meet these needs. After attending his lectures, I feel better prepared to practice. I always leave his lectures with a nugget to use in my practice. In addition to being a fantastic teacher, Professor Penn is available and willing to mentor. He often agrees to help students with research and professional growth opportunities. He's receptive to professional growth opportunities, which are initiated by the student, while continually making learning and growth opportunities available to the student when appropriate. When he makes a commitment to help a student, he can be depended on to keep this commitment. He keeps track of deadlines and works diligently to meet these deadlines on behalf of students that he mentors. He has numerous contacts. If he feels that there are mentors who are more suited to meet the needs of the student, he connects the students to the best mentor. He is not vain or selfish. All of his actions are designed to meet the needs of the students. If asked to sum up his characteristics in one word, the word would be versatile. Versatility encompasses knowledge and the skills necessary to share this knowledge with those who most need it. As students learning the skills necessary to provide proper patient care, Professor Penn's versatility is indispensable. The width and breadth of his knowledge has no boundaries. He never fails to respond to students' questions. There are times when he will candidly admit that he does not have the answer. However, he always commits to investigate, try to find the answer, and provide students with a response. In keeping with his word, he will follow up with journal articles or other resources to provide clarity to students. The characteristics that make Professor Penn a great teacher are many and varied, including acting. It was my second week in class. I was a little late. Not the impression I wanted to make as a first year postmaster's mental health nurse practitioner student. I breathed a sigh of relief when I noticed that the teacher had not started the lecture. Instead, there was a stranger at the podium. The man at the podium was dressed strangely, but since he had on a Halloween costume and it was close to Halloween, I assumed that it was a joke. Then I realized the strangely dressed man at the podium was Professor Penn. He was delivering a very important lecture on psychosis and schizophrenia, and he was in full costume. He was dressed as a well known, unhoused Franciscan who was psychotic. And since that time, I have learned that that is Emperor Norton. So I recommend that you do check out that YouTube. Um, I have learned that Professor Pence does not do anything half heartedly. He immerses himself in his lectures, his practice, research, and everything else that makes him a fantastic teacher. Therefore, I would like to thank the selection committee for acknowledging that Professor Andrew Penn is a teacher of distinction. I would like to congratulate Professor Penn and thank him for everything that he has done for me, as well as many other students.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Diane Kim.
Diane Kim, it's a pleasure to be here. I completed the UCSF Psych NP program back in 2018. And it's really meaningful to be here and to be able to share my experiences I've had with Andrew. I've worked with Andrew in various capacities over the years, and I've been able to witness all of these different hats that he wears, which are many, as many of us know. I was a student in his psychopharmacology class in the spring of 2016. I also did my clinical residency at Kaiser with him with the intensive outpatient program during my second year of the master's program, and both were very formative and impactful experiences in my journey as a student. So when I transitioned to working as a full-time psych NP, I was understandably overwhelmed, right? Finally trekking up this steep face of this learning curve that I'd only heard about from a theoretical perspective. And so now the work was really beginning, and it was really exciting, but it was mostly terrifying. And I remember having a whole slew of complex cases and just feeling like I was drowning. And I reached out to Andrew and asked if I could run some cases by him. And he was willing to help, which I thought was amazing because I was not even his student at that point, right, technically. And he offered to do monthly check-ins or kind of as needed check-ins, which was really generous of him. And I remember I would come to our sessions with this laundry list of questions and cases, and just had this kind of stressful, frenetic energy of what med do I start? How do I manage this? How do I manage that? And he would always slow me down, right? Almost painfully so, just to help me remember, okay, we're dealing with a human here. What's this person's story? Why are they struggling, right? Who is this person? And I remember just really appreciating him bringing that humanity, and always bringing that humanity to the patient, right? And so, yeah, I really valued that, Andrew.
Thank you, Diane.
The other thing about Andrew is, no matter how busy he is, he always makes you feel like he has time for you. Whether that's, being on the phone for 45 minutes doing a case consultation, or even in his office, when we're at Kaiser. And it's a special thing, because, now that I'm practicing as an NP, and now that I'm precepting, I'm realizing everything I didn't know that goes into precepting, right? You have the busy flow of your day, you're teaching, you're supporting, you're guiding. There's a lot of effort that goes into that. And so now that I have that context, I'm just realizing just how above and beyond Andrew would go. And, it's made me realize that all of these things, that mentoring, teaching, connecting, counseling, I mean, it's the very intrinsic part of who Andrew is as an educator, right? These are not just things he shows up to do and then he hangs it up on a coat rack at the end of the day, but this is really who he embodies. And Andrew's, not only played a really important role in my clinical development, but also personally and professionally, he's been very helpful as well. During moments of overwhelm and doubt, I would question, what have I done? Am I in the right field? And Andrew would always kind of bring me back to why it is that we do what we do, right? The value that we can offer and the meaning within the work. And the other thing that I really appreciated about Andrew is that he would always really encourage me to show up with self-confidence, right? And he taught me how to own my seat at the table as an NP student, or as an NP, instead of just saying, thanks for letting me be here. And so I've appreciated how he's helped me to understand the value that I bring as a nurse, as a provider, and as an individual. And somehow, Andrew, you make it seem like there are 48 hours in a day instead of 24. It doesn't compute. I don't know how you can balance having a rich personal life, a family, teaching, mentoring, writing, publishing, running journal clubs, being part of psychedelic research at UCSF. It's incredible to think about all that you do. And I really see you as this kind of fearless trailblazer within our profession as NPs, and it's really inspiring. So this award is very well deserved. Thank you so much for the role that you've played in my development. You're an invaluable asset to the field of psychiatry, to NPs, and to all of the individuals that you've impacted. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Oh.
Kudos. We have another of your colleague who'd actually like to say a couple of words, who you referenced in your comments, Andrew. It's Marianne Neihart from the VA would like to say a few words.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for inviting me. And I can't think of a person that deserves this more. Years ago, when we first taught together, I was so impressed with your ability to make sense out of complex things. And I am pleased to know that you have taken your natural entertainment value to a new level. Well deserved. Everybody that works with you, and certainly I feel very privileged to have you at the VA as part of our nurse practitioner NP residency for psych mental health nurse practitioner residency. And I want to say that in that role, you serve not just the residents, but everybody I talk to learns from you. Whether it is psychiatry residents or physicians themselves or psychologists, you are always teaching. And that's the innate ability I saw in you years ago. And I am so pleased that you are doing what you're doing now. Congratulations on this award. very heartfelt.
Thank you, Marianne. Marianne called me one day about 12 years ago and says, would you be willing to put 3 talks together in the next 2 months and then give them in 3 places in different parts of the country? And I said, maybe against my better judgment, yes. And here we are. So thank you, Marianne.
Well, clearly it was no problem because you get 48 hours out of every day.
Apparently, I make really strong coffee. I'm not sure which.
Well, and apropos of one of your slides, I think we should request that the administration replace the formal academic regalia at graduation with more Emperor Norton-esque costumes.
I would get behind that, Steve. Yeah.
Fantastic. Would anyone else like to say something? All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. Obviously, everyone is tremendously impressed with all that you do, and we really honor the work, and congratulations again.
Thanks, Steve.
So we'll move on to Vanya Douglas. He's been at UCSF for over 5 years, significantly over 5 years. I've known him for more than 5 years, just as an aside. And so Vanya is an associate professor of clinical neurology. He's currently the chief of the neurohospitalist division. He used to be the neurology clerkship director for about 7 years, and is also now the associate director of the adult neurology residency training program. He's based here at UCSF Parnassus, and is really just a legend among neurology faculty, a fount of knowledge, and obviously a teacher of great renown. And so with that, Vanya, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Steve. Wow, this is just such an incredible honor. And I'm very grateful to be here and to have gotten this award. It's pretty amazing. So I want to thank some people. I want to thank all of the students, the residents and fellows and faculty that I've worked with over the years. I want to give a special thank you to the folks who nominated me for this award. Andy Josephson, our department chair, for his unfailing support of me over the years. Steve Hauser, our former chair, who first put me in a position where I had the opportunity to touch so many lives through teaching as a neurohospitalist. And I want to thank all of my mentees, fellows, residents, students, both those who helped with my nomination, Ilan Guterman, Sarah LaHue, Addie Goss, Joe Sanford, Britta Lindquist, and Harrison Hines, and all the others that I've had the absolute honor of working with over the years. You know, our learners are always an inspiration to me. The dedication with which they approach their training and their incredible accomplishments, well beyond anything I've ever accomplished, certainly makes me go the extra mile to live up to their expectations as an educator and a role model. I also want to thank all of my teachers over the years, my own mentors. I've had so many amazing people to learn from. I'll just list a few, and I know I'll leave some people out, but Ann Poncelet, Andy Josephson, John Engstrom, Steve Hauser, Cheryl J., Bob Laser, Michael Amanoff, Kathy Lomenhurth, Heidi Kirsch, Paul Garcia, Dan Lowenstein, Jeff Ralph, Wade Smith, Narissa Coe, Claude Hemphill, Karen Parko, Gary Abrams, Ray Swanson. The list just goes on and on. And everything I've ever done as a teacher, I've basically copied from all of them. So I want to say thank you to all of you for teaching me how to do it. And then finally, I want to thank my incredibly supportive wife, Nell, and my 3 wonderful kids, Charlie, Maddie, and Milo, for whom I'm unendingly grateful. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Vanya. Just to quote a few things from your nomination packet, and if anybody else would like to speak, just put it in the chat and I'll call on you. You know, some quotes. Vanya is keenly invested in the success of our trainees, and his ability to guide them with kindness and humility is an inspiration, especially in light of his extraordinary skills. He strikes exactly the right balance between supervising our residents and allowing them the independence to become confident professionals. I think that really captures the notion of graded responsibility that many of us seek training clinical colleagues. It can be a very challenging balance, and it's one of the most important skills that we bring as professors. So thank you for that. It looks like Andy Josephson is in the comments. Andy, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I can be very brief, Steve. Thanks. I am just could not be more proud that Vanya got this award. In our department, Vanya is, as you said, a bit of a legend when it comes to teaching. His clinical skills are quite amazing, but I think it's important, as we all know, that there's people who are just fantastic master clinicians who aren't great teachers, either because they don't have that skill, they haven't learned that skill, or that's not something they're dedicated to. And I think what's so amazing about Vanya is this incredible mix of being the go-to clinician when it comes to difficult inpatient problems, and then such a wonderful and dedicated teacher. Vanya, as he sort of said in his incredibly modest way, has this unbelievable presence of putting the learner first and understanding that clinical care in an academic medical center is about as much of how do we help the learner get to where they need to be at the same time that we're giving great care. That can be very difficult to walk that tightrope. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone, certainly including myself in my career, who could do that as well as Vanya. And so I think on behalf of the whole Department of Neurology, the Neurohospitalist Division, we just really want to say congratulations to Vanya for an award that is overdue and incredibly well-deserved. Congratulations, Vanya.
Thank you, Andy. That means a ton.
Yeah,
as you know, as I've told other people, getting this award just means now I have to work even harder to live up to the expectations. So there you go. I need some of those 48-hour days.
Yeah, we need to bottle that. Yeah, I would say that, when Vanya comes down to the neuroangiography suites with his cohort of students, we can definitely tell that they are hanging on his every word. And what always impresses me about you, Vanya, is not only do you have just a tremendous depth of knowledge in spinal vascular disease and a lot of these other sort of esoteric things that I and my colleagues in interventional neuroradiology deal with sort of every day, so we have some knowledge of it. But you as a neurohospitalist are responsible for such a large amount of knowledge in so many areas in neurology and teasing out, what's really going on with people. So that's always been very impressive to me, is your breadth of knowledge and your ability to communicate that to your students and to bring out their knowledge as well, because not everybody is, immediately able to express, what he or she knows about some of these neurologic conditions. And I think you do have a really unique ability to bring that out in your students, and you should be very proud of that.
Thank you, Steve.
A couple of other comments from nominators. Vanya walks the walk as a true triple threat, embodying the very best qualities of the physician educator. Students are inspired by his teaching skills and equally by his luminous spirit and unwavering dedication to patients and people. That's very sweet. In the chat, Elena, would you like to say a few words?
I would. I didn't anticipate saying this, but I think as the representation of the many trainees who have benefited from Vanya's teaching, I think it would be remiss to lose the opportunity to share not only my thanks, but I know I share the thanks of everybody else who has trained with Vanya. You mentioned, Steve, how everybody who comes down to the reading room with Vanya clearly has a strong grasp of neurology. But I would say that there are a few people who we interact with who not only increase our ability to localize a lesion, but also have us leave the residency a better person and teacher and understander of the world around us. And I think that I echo many friends, peers, teachers of mine who've learned from Vanya when I say it's undeniable that we all benefit from that as well. So thank you not only for the lessons that you think you're teaching, but the lessons you probably don't even know that you share with all of us.
Wow. Well, thanks, Elon. That means a lot. I think the role modeling of kindness and humility and those attributes, I think that you're referencing. It's such an important part of what we do as physicians, as humans. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, I think that really captures your spirit of teaching, Vanya. And it is a nice transition into another comment here by another nominator. His comments during clinical teaching moments are incisive, thoughtful, and impactful. And I think, you know, as Elon had said, a lot of neurology is localizing the lesion, but you're able to convey that knowledge and that approach without lesioning the student. You're able to provide that structure and that knowledge in a very welcoming way. And I think, you know, your learners really appreciate that, as do your colleagues. Would anyone else like to offer some comments for Vanya? We want to see if we can make him blush anymore.
Thanks, Steve. Can I get some constructive feedback to balance that out, please?
That will be in the closed session later. So very good. So the first question was actually the same as we had asked Andrew. What do you think has been the biggest change in the learning climate in the past decade?
So you sent me these questions ahead of time, and they're pretty heavy duty questions. So I decided to just go full heavy duty and give you some heavy duty answers. And so the answer to this question about the learning climate, I think, is that there's a bigger emphasis on inclusivity and respect than I think there used to be. I think we're paying more attention to the needs of our patients and those of our learners in the clinical and learning environment. And I think there's more compassion and more humanism in that clinical learning environment as a result. I don't think we're perfect. I don't think all of us do all the things right all of the time, which is a tall order. But I think what we've developed here at UCSF is a culture where there's pressure from both learners and from leaders that we keep striving for the highest degree of professionalism possible. I often think back to when I was a student here at UCSF, and I had some experiences that were frankly not pleasant. I remember on some rotations hearing pejorative terms for bariatric surgery patients, or supervising physicians using pretty denigrating language about patients suffering from chronic pain. And I remember feeling back to that, feeling disheartened by those experiences. And I also remember feeling a little lost, like I didn't know who I could tell about these experiences that I was having. And while I don't think that kind of thing has been completely eliminated, I do think things have changed. And I think a lot of us at UCSF have been working on increasing professionalism over the years. But I think that what really caused things to shift dramatically at UCSF was White Coats for Black Lives and the Differences Matter initiative. So I think that when White Coats for Black Lives was founded and Differences Matter was founded, we started to really listen to each other. And we especially started to listen to the experiences of our Black learners. And then we started to expose and talk about traumatic experiences that people can have in our learning environment. We learned about microaggressions. We learned to be mindful of our own biases, to become watchful for microaggressions and overt racism, and then to develop skills in how to respond to those things. And then we leaned into revising our curriculum to remove any oppressive language and to put systems in place for reporting mistreatment and responding to it. And I think this raises the level of professionalism across the board. You know, if you start paying attention to microaggressions against Black people, or microaggressions against other racial minorities, sexual and gender minorities, microaggressions against women, you start paying attention to microaggressions and offensive language across the board. You notice when somebody says something offensive about an overweight patient, about a patient with chronic pain, about patients that we deal with functional neurologic disorders. That's just to name a few. And I know you can't magically stop people from ever saying any insensitive things, but I think we're moving towards a culture and a system where we encourage and expect everyone, including our learners, to report any incidents of mistreatment or oppression to leadership. And I think our learners feel safe. I hope they feel safe doing so. I think we're moving towards a place where they do feel safe. And I also hope that our learners trust that leadership has the interest, the resources, and the tools to respond appropriately to these things. So I think we're, you know, in the middle of the journey, or maybe some might say at the beginning of the journey, but we're heading in a positive direction together. So I want to finish answering that question by giving another thank you and just express gratitude to all of the courageous UCSF medical students who were instrumental in founding White Coats for Black Lives and in bringing about the Differences Matter initiative. And I'll give a special shout out to one of our residents, Coffee Hemphill, who was one of those founders, and for really helping us envision and build a learning and work environment where we can demand the level of respect and professionalism to which we aspire and that reflects the values that we espouse here at UCSF.
I think you've put it perfectly, Vanya. You know, it really is a piece of respect and professionalism. And I think Differences Matter has made a tremendous contribution to that. You know, through the lens of the Committee on Academic Personnel, I'll tell you, there is a section on faculty CVs about contributions to diversity. And we read that and we look forward to reading that. That's sometimes one of the more interesting pieces of somebody's promotion packet. And it's something that we really encourage all faculty to be aware of and to think hard about, because, you know, society is diverse, and part of our mission as a university is to respect that and to develop our ability to interact with each other in productive ways. And so, yeah, I think through the lens of social justice and through the lens of better understanding our patients, our colleagues, and society, you've really hit the nail on the head. It is a piece of professionalism that we are on the journey to at UCSF. And I'm glad that leadership really has emphasized it in recent years and will continue to. So thank you. Why don't we move on to the second question? I'm sorry for forgetting to mention it before. So what do you see as the greatest challenge for your learners in the next 5 years?
All right, well, so I thought a lot about this question. And, you know, at the end, I decided, like, well, what about just becoming a doctor? I think becoming an excellent doctor is really hard. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, it takes 4 years of medical school and then anywhere from 3 to 7 years of residency to become a licensed and board certified physician. And so I think that just the length of training defines the challenge. And, you know, if you reflect on what students and physicians today have to learn and learn continuously, the pace of medical discovery and expansion in medical knowledge is astounding. If you look at the pace, I look back at the pace of drug development and the number of drugs that are approved by the FDA every year. And about 20 years ago, it's an average of about 20 new drugs per year. And now it's usually 40 drugs or more that are approved by the FDA. And we have to stay on top of all of this information. It's pretty incredible. So you know, you can see this in the way that medical education has shifted from teaching kind of a set of core comprehensive facts that everybody needs to know and graduate with, to emphasizing basic foundational concepts and then really teaching students how to become lifelong learners and gain the ability to basically constantly acquire new knowledge at the point of care when they're taking care of patients. So I think that's an incredible challenge. And if you think about what it takes to climb that mountain and to learn all that, the medical professionals end up being some of the most highly skilled and highly trained professionals in the world, in any field, really. And I think when you combine that intellectual challenge with the interpersonal and communication skills that one needs to gain for clinical excellence, and the personal resilience you need to get to learn to deal with all the emotional challenges of helping other people cope with sadness, with loss, with disappointment, with anger, and the physical challenges of night shifts and long hours, I don't think we need to look too far for the big challenges that people are going to face. I like to think of becoming a physician, like the analogy is similar to that of becoming a professional athlete. It's just not quite as physical, but I think our trainees are just as highly specialized and skilled, and they need to put in that same level of commitment into learning their craft as any athlete, at the peak of their sport. So it's hard. And the reward of all that hard work is that you get to be a physician, and you are then given great responsibility for other people's well-being. And that responsibility, that is a wonderful and beautiful job. It's a constant call to service. It's incredibly meaningful and incredibly fulfilling. And I think that all of our learners should take great pride in the amount of work that they put into their training to gain the skills that they need for a life of service. But, and this is a big but, we know that 42% of all physicians are burned out. And in my specialty in neurology, 50 to 60% of neurologists are burned out based on pretty big surveys. And so that's my second big challenge, I think. The first challenge is becoming a doctor, and the second challenge is being glad that you did it. And it's weird. I think at first glance, when you think about burnout, you wonder, like, how can people with such an inherently meaningful profession be so burned out? But, there are all these reasons for burnout, and they're well documented. You've got the long hours, less time to spend with each patient, all this regulatory burden, documentation requirements, the electronic health record, requirements for out-of-visit communication, sometimes perception of lack of respect from employers and administrators. I think the common theme to all the factors that contribute to burnout are they make the work of medicine lose its meaning by kind of chipping away at our ability to focus on the doctor-patient relationship. And so I think the big challenge that our learners are going to face in the next 5 years, in addition to simply learning the job, is how to hold on to that meaning in their work as physicians. I think that every health system certainly has the responsibility to address burnout by making structural changes, and every health system leader should be making that a top priority. But I also think no matter what structural changes are made, being a doctor is always going to be very hard. So I think our learners have to also develop and hone strategies to combat burnout. And our educational systems have to teach the learners those skills. And those may ultimately be just as important as any other competency, any other core competency that you get during your medical training. So I think that's going to be a continued kind of point of emphasis in medical education over the coming years.
Yeah, Vanya, I think that's tremendously important. We ask so much of our people, and it's really important to remember, there's the sort of acute situation quip of, in an emergency situation, the first pulse you have to take is your own. The burnout is sort of the chronic manifestation of that, because the demands of our professions are very high. We do have to remember to take care of each other. As healthcare providers, we do need to be there for each other, and we need to try to achieve, what's often the hardest thing in life, which is balance. And in any given moment, as we know, it's going to be 100% one thing, and in another moment, it may be 50% one thing, 50% another thing. and trying to communicate that to our learners so that they realize, yeah, during the arc of your career, it will be very rewarding, and there will be moments when you literally are saving lives. But it is the long game, and you need to be able to persist through adversity, because there will be challenges. And so I think you've really encapsulated it well. And again, a demonstration why you have been selected for this award. So, just as when many of us initially were called doctor for the first time, and it was, not ironic. I'm sure you remember the first time you were called professor, and it wasn't in a mocking tone, but certainly the kind of humanistic knowledge that you convey to your students, I think embodies, what it means to be a professor. So thank you, Vanya, for all that you do.
Those thoughts.
All right, I think this time I'm not jumping the gun in the slides, and we will move on to the Distinction in Mentoring Award. So this is a more recent creation from 2008, and it recognizes faculty to faculty or faculty to fellow mentoring efforts. And there are two categories, one at the associate professor level and one at the full professor level. The award selection committee is similar to the Distinction in Teaching Award, with 4 full professors, 1 from each school, 4 associate professors, 1 from each school, and then it's chaired by a member of CAP. And this year it was Andy Posselt from transplant surgery. And the questions were provided by prior awardees in the Distinction in Mentoring Award category. So for 2020, there were actually not any nominations at the associate professor level this year. Perhaps it was because of the pandemic and people were just overwhelmed with emails. So we hope to get nominations next year. So anybody tuned in today, please consider nominating a colleague next year at the associate professor level. At the full professor level, I'm really pleased to announce that this year's awardee is Dr. Julene Johnson, professor in the Institute for Health and Aging in the School of Nursing. She also serves as the Associate Dean for Research in the School of Nursing, and in the School of Medicine, she serves as a faculty member at the UCSF Center for Aging in Diverse Communities. And so with that, Professor Johnson, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Steve, for your introduction, and I'm very, very honored to receive this award. I would say that mentoring is the most important part of my academic career, and for multiple reasons. And Vanya was talking about meaning, and I think as a mentor, it brings an enormous amount of meaning to what I do as an academic. But also I would add on that, there's an enormous amount of joy and inspiration that I receive from every person that I've mentored over my almost 25 years in academia. And importantly, there's an aspect of learning and knowledge that I get to learn from all of the mentees. And I'd like to share a slide here which lists my mentees and talk a little bit about the knowledge that I've learned from them. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Terrific. So this is a list of, in not a comprehensive list, but this is a list of my mentees. And I want to thank each of them for nominating me for this mentoring award. And what I'd like to do is share a little bit about what I've learned from each of them. So Elena Porticolone, just amazing associate professor here at UCSF Institute for Health and Aging. And what I've learned from her is how to listen to how diverse research participants share their experiences and how you turn these stories into research studies and eventually policy. And I think her research has just been golden, and I'm really honored to have worked with her for many years as her mentor. Teresa Allison, and amazing things I've learned from her, and especially how to channel our love for the humanities into rigorous NIH-funded research. And when I started in academia over 20 years ago, I would have never thought we could get NIH funding for our research in the humanities. Jerry Neuter is another amazing mentee. And although I study aging, I've learned so much about how pregnant mothers living with HIV in sub-Saharan Africa experience their lives. And I never thought I'd be so interested in the other end of the lifespan, but through Jerry and his inspiration and knowledge, I've learned that. From Dorina Batrofsky, University of Pennsylvania, currently a postdoc, soon to take on a new tenure track position as assistant professor. And she's one of the first people who came to me with an interest in studying music in the brain. And she was a doctoral student. And I was honored to be on her doctoral committee and then helped mentor in her postdoc and soon to be assistant professor position. Thank you, Dorina. And here at UCSF, Chinaza Ochi, who's a current UCSF medical student. And I learned so much from her last summer where she was talking about the importance of song and dance for older adults of color who are living during the pandemic and what their experiences were when suddenly a lot of their social connections with their communities were taken away with the pandemic and how they continued to engage in song and dance. Jackie Eaton is one of my mentors who's on an NIHK award right now, and she's at the University of Utah. And I've learned how she uses her passion to develop and test novel interventions for caregivers of persons living with dementia. And she uses theater to help develop these interventions. And she's incredibly brilliant, and I look forward to working with her. Judy Pa was my first postdoc ever, and now she's extremely successful tenured associate professor at the University of Southern California. And she studies brain mechanisms and physical activity and is just having a stellar career, and I'm so proud of her. But I've learned a lot from her too. In fact, I still go to her with some of my questions about my grants, so that the mentor-mentee relationship gets blurry as we go along. Yi-Sung Byun is at University of Washington, and she helped me learn about how cognition, sleep, and subarachnoid hemorrhages are related, which before I worked with her, I was completely unaware about how those things could be related. And Jen James here at the UCSF Institute for Health and Aging, I'm learning more about how older adults living with chronic conditions who were incarcerated are experiencing life. And I am just in awe of her qualitative methods that she used to better understand their experiences. And Linda Park, she has been teaching me about what are the barriers to continuing cardiac rehab and physical activity among older Asian Americans. So this is just a short list of the many mentees that I've had an opportunity to learn from. But at this point too, I want to acknowledge my mentors and the people who have really made an impact on my life. And Anita Stewart here at UCSF is a professor, Wendy Max, the director of the Institute for Health and Aging, Carl Kottman, who is my postdoc mentor down at UC Irvine, Liz Watkins here at UCSF, and a lifelong mentoring team, Ken and Betty Justice, who since meeting them in high school have been my second parents all the way throughout my career. So I want to thank everybody, my mentees and my mentors. I'll stop my slides here and turn it back over to Steve. Thank you.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Julene. And this next portion, we have 3 questions for you. And what's kind of fun is that the 3 questions come from prior awardees for the Distinction in Mentoring Award. And so I'll just go in order here. The first one is from Naomi Bardock, who won the award back in 2020. And her question for you is, what is a lesson you learned from being a mentee that you pass along to your mentees or that informs your approach to mentoring?
Well, that's a really good question. I have been a mentee for almost all of my life. And so there's a lot of potential lessons that I've learned. But I think the one that's most important to share is that mentees should not be afraid to ask for advice when they're dealing with an issue. And the reason is because your mentor has probably been through something similar, or they know of somebody who has, and it's already been discussed. And being in academia, there's really nothing worse than feeling like you're alone when you're going through something. So I encourage all of my mentees to reach out, share your frustrations, share some of the challenges that you're having, and lean on your mentors, because I think they can really help you. And it may not just be one mentor's opinion you ask, but I'm a real advocate for mentoring teams. And you might take that same challenge and go around and ask the different mentors that you have, how they dealt with something similar, or maybe they know of how one of their colleagues has dealt with something. So that's just kind of a practical, short advice about what I've learned about being a mentee. And it's not always easy to open up and ask questions, but I think in mentors, you find trust, and I think the trust is bi-directional. So it's a great relationship to be able to learn more about academia.
Yeah, definitely. And, I often feel we learn as much from the people who are nominally our mentees as, they learn from us. And I think your point about, having a team of mentees and going to different people for different sorts of information or advice is really well-founded and something that, being at UCSF, I've always found to be a wonderful thing, because there are so many really accomplished people, really insightful people, and you can almost always find somebody who has a perspective that is helpful for helping you to figure out whatever it is you need to figure out.
Absolutely.
So I think the next question comes from Monica Gandhi, who was honored last year. And that question is, how has attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion affected your mentoring practice?
Well, as Vanya pointed out, this has been, something that's very important to UCSF in recent years. And it carries, some particular responsibility. And I want to start by saying that today, George Floyd was murdered just 1 year ago. And this past year in particular, the pandemic and these repeated acts of social injustices, being the unnecessarily killing of Black Americans during encounters with the police, the overrepresentation of Latinos and Black Americans with COVID-19, the increased food insecurity and need for affordable housing in San Francisco. And all of these has raised our collective awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like I often do, I turn to my research participants for wisdom. And an 85-year-old participant in my Community of Voices study recently shared with me. She said, "Miss Julene, this isn't new. We've been through much worse." And at that time, she was actually proudly showing me a teaching certificate that she'd earned as a Black educator in Texas. And this certificate allowed her to teach at the only school of higher education for Black students in Texas sometime during the 1950s and 60s. And she was amazingly proud of that. And I reflect often on what our participants, especially the diverse racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic participants in our studies, share with them about their experience of aging. And as a cognitive neuroscientist, I often think about how human beings kind of direct our spotlight of attention on various issues, whether they be social, environmental, or political, or anything else. And while the recent attention to diversity, equity, inclusion at UCSF is much needed, it is much overdue. And we must acknowledge that universities have had a role in perpetuating the structural racism, and for a long time. And the culture of academia is often unwelcome to faculty of color, and the advancement process can be challenging. And we have many opportunities actually to change this. And as mentors, we have an opportunity to make UCSF more inclusive by assuring that our faculty of color and those underrepresented in academia have more robust mentorship. And as mentors, we need to listen to their experiences and find creative and lasting ways to make UCSF more inclusive. And non-faculty of color, like myself, need to step up to the plate and prioritize mentoring with faculty of color and those who are underrepresented in academia. And we can do this now. And as Chancellor Hoggood wrote yesterday in calling out the killing of George Floyd, as we emerge from the pandemic, we have an opportunity to transform our resolve and resilience into a new foundation for the contributions we can make to the public as leaders in healthcare and research. And it seems like a call to action. And as mentors, we need to act.
Thank you for that. And yes, it is a grim anniversary, and a lot has been brought into the foreground this year that I think has often been in the background in American society. And it is good that things are in the foreground, because when people can recognize things for what they are, they can address them more easily and more directly. And so thank you for those comments. I think that's exactly right. You know, California has a tradition of leading the way. Some people say California is the future and always will be. I think we can be proud of that and help to lead with eyes open for greater equality and inclusion. And so I think that your comments are really well taken, and it's incumbent upon all faculty to act in those ways. And within the Academic Senate, one way that we're promoting that, UCSF has been particularly good in terms of faculty from all the different lines are involved in the Academic Senate, including adjunct faculty and health sciences clinical faculty who are disproportionately women and underrepresented minorities. And now we're pushing at the university-wide level for all of the campuses to recognize folks in all the different academic series to participate in shared governance of our university, because often policies disproportionately affect different people of different backgrounds. And again, when you bring the data to the forefront, then you can better understand, you know, how to have a more equitable and inclusive situation really for everyone. And so I really appreciate those comments. And so then the third question, can you tell us about one of your influential mentors and how you adapted to what you learned from them into your approach toward mentoring?
Okay, so this one's going to be a little practical, and I'm going to talk about my extraordinary mentor, Anita Stewart, who has for many years given me and shared so much wisdom with me, both personal life issues, academic issues, you know, planning visions for the future, etc. But today I want to share a really practical tip that she taught me that I have probably shared with every single one of my mentees and all the PhD students in the School of Nursing that I work with. And one is, it's extremely important to learn how to write clearly and have very strong logical arguments when you're writing grants and manuscripts. And one of the tips that she taught me was that, first of all, first thing you do is you start with your ideas and you put them in an outline and kind of bullet them. And then the next step, you actually try to write out those bullets in more prose, like in the form of a paragraph. I mean, these aren't critical, right? These are what we learned in high school writing. But she adds one more step that I think is incredibly critical for learning how to write in a persuasive way. Now, after you have your paragraph, go back and outline those points that you thought you made in your paragraph. And I think what you can immediately see if you're diligent in doing this is you can see where your logical arguments break down. And so this process of outlining, writing prose, and then going back and outlining your paragraphs has been incredibly helpful in my learning how to be a better writer. And I didn't learn this until I was a professor. So this tip. So I think I'm always open to learning. And that's just a practical skill, well, a tip that I wanted to share with anybody. So there you go.
I think that's a great tip, you know, the re-outlining to, you know, truth squad yourself and say, did I really say what I meant to say? That's
exactly. Most times I haven't.
It's like, where did I go off the rails here?
Yeah. So thank you, Anita. I see you on the call today. So I've used that tip so many times, and thank you so much.
That's great. A really useful tip and trick. Well, I think we can move to some comments from some of your nominators. I think at least some of them are on the line. Dorina Batrofsky, were you able to join the call today? If not, I think she actually sent in a little video clip that we could play.
Hi, my name is Dorina Batrofsky, and I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. Julene, congratulations on being selected for the UCSF Academic Senate Distinction in Mentoring Award. You definitely deserve this award. I've known Julene for about 10 years now. And one of the things I appreciate about Julene's mentoring style is that she's always available to talk with me, whether it's about research or personal matters or overall career advancement. I really appreciate her availability. As I have gone from being a predoctoral student to postdoctoral fellowship, I really realized the importance of time. And then when we give time to others, it really means a lot. And one of the funniest things I remember about working with Julene is that one time at the Gerontological Society of America conference, she insisted on paying for the lunch, and she took me out to lunch. I was actually really wanted to pay, and she said, absolutely not. You are a student, so I will treat you. And believe it or not, she's the only mentor I've ever had who treated me out to lunch like this. And as you know, when you're a student, food matters a lot. And I really appreciate her kindness to me when I was a student. So congratulations again. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
That was really nice. I'm sure Dorina would have liked to be here in person, but it was really sweet that she was able to record that. Why don't we move on to Jerry John Neuter?
Right. Hi, congratulations, Julene, on this very important award, and I'm so thankful to you for all the mentoring and everything that you have done for me in my 2 years here at UCSF. I remember my first meeting with Julene. I came and then I had to go back to Princeton to pick something, and then the flight got canceled, and I was meeting with Julene the following day, and I was so worried that I wasn't going to meet with Julene as we planned. So I quickly sent email to Julene that I couldn't make it because my flight got canceled, and she was so very receptive and was like kind in rescheduling the meeting, and that was so nice of you. And I think you've been very, very helpful and always there for me anytime I need it, especially regarding my research, writing, and everything. You have been amazing and very knowledgeable, and everything about research. Whenever I have any question or somebody asks me anything about research and how to progress, I'm like, oh no, I have Julene. Julene is like my superwoman as far as research is concerned. And then I always reach out and I always get the best answer from you. And I think another thing that makes you outstanding mentor is that you are not only interested or just concerned about success in career, but also very concerned about every aspect of my life, how to live okay and be comfortable and have everything working well, so that the academic part or the research part will also be very successful. And I think I'm very, very grateful. And there's one thing also about you that I can never never forget that whenever I write a thing that is not very good or not up to standard, you have a nice way of correcting. And it's like somebody would say you correct in love, that I don't really feel very bad and don't feel like I'm dumb, but you kind of like make it like, yeah, it is a process, then I'm getting there. And I think that is very, very helpful so far in my career. And I think you are teaching me a lot that I'm hoping, I'm learning, and going to also make sure that I use to mentor my mentees in the future. And I've started using some of your skills already. So thank you so much, and congratulations once again.
Thank you, Jerry.
Fantastic. I think next we have Elena Porticolone.
Yes, so thank you, Julene. Congratulations today. And how it is to be mentored by Julene. It's both electrifying and soothing. And it's electrifying because Julene allows us to deeply fall in love with science, as she is. She's very much in love with science, and she transmits her love to us. And how she allows us to think as big as in a way so big that we could not even imagine it in our wildest dreams. So she helped us design ideas and projects that we could never do it alone. And then she helped us create this project as realities, as grant project, and then as helping us managing them. And also she has this gift, which is impossible to imitate, that she gives critique with immense grace. I don't know, maybe she hypnotizes us, but it feels good. And I can't replicate it. It's really impossible. So she could destroy a grant. I remember once she was totally destroying the grant at the beginning. I said, but she does it so well, and I'm so grateful. She's spending time with me, and maybe because her office was very dark with nice lights, and so it's really pleasurable actually to get to be critiqued by her. And for me, one of the fondest, I have many fond memories of her, and I really I'm really grateful also because she's also, Julene is bigger than life. And so she has many loves. She's not only in love with science, and she's also in love, for example, with nature and California nature. So you may not know that she's an expert of lichens and moss, and she loves, she's very intrepid. She goes camping in winter in Northern California, where it's freaking cold and damp. And she can sleep in hammocks. And for me, what is really touching is when I see the two loves of science and nature together. So for example, we're in a meeting in her office, and suddenly she stopped talking about a grant to look at a beautiful bird outside her window. Or during a Zoom call, you should have seen her excitement looking at an owl that was staring at her from the window. And to conclude, one of the fun moment was when I could see these two loves, a conflict between the love for science and the love for nature, because it was January and we had a meeting early in January, and she came to the office with her sports shoes. And I didn't say anything because usually she doesn't wear them. And she said, look, I just came back from a wonderful trip in the Redwoods, and I just wanted to still be there. So as a connection to the woods, I'm still wearing these shoes. So thank you, Julene. Wonderful for your precious mentorship and for being in my life. Thank you. Grazie.
Grazie. That's beautiful. Thank you.
That is fantastic. I've never heard electrifying but soothing in the same sentence. It's truly impressive. You have some serious skills, Julene, delivering commentary back to folks. I think Amber is going to do some sharing on behalf of Allison Teresa.
And Teresa Allison, yep.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to tell us a little about this?
So Teresa said she will be on clinical service today, and she didn't have time to record something, but before the pandemic, they went to the Big Scene, California together, and the t-shirt is kind of adorable. Sing is a great description of Julene. If you want a little blurb, see below. It isn't often at UCSF that a mentee spends the day going to UC Berkeley with their mentor in order to sing, but Julene isn't a typical mentor. Soon after completion of her cluster randomized trial of choirs for diverse older adults, she and I went to participate in the largest choir event in California history. Like everything else with Julene, it was intellectually challenging, creative, and a ton of fun. This is the t-shirt from that event. So I'm sure she could wish she could be here, but she wanted to share that with everyone.
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
Teresa has an amazing voice. We're both altos. It was terrifically fun. She said it right.
A mentor for all seasons. That's just tremendous. Would anyone else like to offer some comments?
Hi, this is Judy Pye. I just wanted to take a moment and say congratulations to Julene. I'm so proud of you. I worked with Julene back in 2007 as her first postdoctoral fellow, and she wooed me. I was in Southern California, and she wooed me with all of the intellect and rigor at UCSF, and I went up there and did a postdoc. We were in this beautiful building on Parnassus at the top floor. Julene had a penthouse office with a window that opened, and birds would come and land on her perch of her window, and she would get to see them, and she could see the bridge. And we fell in love with that space. Only a little while after did I find out that that was actually a condemned building that we were squatting in. So as you all know, space is such a rarity at UCSF, and especially at Parnassus. But we stayed in that building, despite if an earthquake ever hit, we probably wouldn't be here today. But we closed our door and enjoyed the views and kept our heads down to stay in our little office and got to do a lot of fantastic science together. And Julene is still one of my best mentors, one of my favorite mentors. I talk about her probably weekly to my lab about things that she taught me. And I've had the fortune of being able to pass along a lot of her mentorship and just her ability that I think a lot of folks have expressed here, her ability to understand you and to not only have concerns about your research and your science, but really personally and having that connection, and starting every meeting with asking me how I was doing, what was my well-being like, my mental health, how was my family, asking about my husband and my children. So I had my first child when I was Julene's postdoc, and called her and I said, Julene, my K award is due on Tuesday, but I'm at Parnassus and I just had the baby. So what's our game plan here? What's our strategy? She said, well, first of all, get off the phone with me and go back to your newborn and we'll deal with the grant later. But luckily we were able to get it in on time, and she had a new academic grandbaby, and we got that award in and were able to win it. So it was such a tremendous time and a great story that I still share with my mentees. And really, Julene, we talk about you so much. Your ears must be burning all the time. So congratulations. I'm so proud of you and excited and thrilled, and the way that your career has progressed over the last 14 years since I've known you has really been tremendous. So proud of you. I couldn't be happier.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, just that unbroken chain of human connection and mentorship. It's really impressive. It looks like Wendy Max, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I want to say that it was really a wonderful day for the Institute for Health and Aging when Julene decided to move her base of operations to us. One of the things I find really remarkable about Julene's mentoring is that, you know, many of us have people that we work with very intensely, and Julene has some mentees that you've heard from today who really work with her very closely, but she also mentors everybody else. So I know, like, when my mentees are stuck on something, I can say, well, why don't you talk to Julene? You know, why don't you have her read your specific aims, or why don't you see if she thinks this is the right mechanism to apply for? She first took on that role at the Institute for Health and Aging, and now she does it for the entire school in her role in the School of Nursing. She also offers these classes that she's put together on grant writing that reach just a large group of people. And it's not just junior faculty. In many cases, it's some of our more senior faculty that are stuck trying to get things done. So just the fact that, you know, she's so generous with her time. She clearly loves mentoring, and she'll do it on a large scale. I also love the way she combines some of her interests with science. So her interest in music and science, or her interest in lichens, which are clearly based on science. I know my husband's had the privilege of trekking in the woods with her, looking for, you know, getting very excited about these things that you need a magnifying glass to see. I just love that. And I also think that, you know, one of the things that Julene models, which is really important as a mentor, is a work-life balance. I mean, she spends her weekends doing things that, you know, are of great interest to her, and they're not always science. They're trekking in the woods, they're camping, some of the things Elena mentioned. So I just think, you know, Julene has been a wonderful colleague, and I love the way she mentors on such a large scale. Congratulations, Julene. You really deserve this award. We're all very proud of you.
Thank you, Wendy, for all of your support over the years.
It looks like Dorina has joined us. Dorina, we did play your video earlier, but if you want to offer some live commentary, please go ahead.
Sure. So my name is Dorina Batrofsky. I'm at the University of Pennsylvania. Hi, Julene, School of Nursing. So I first met Julene back in, I would say, 2011. And the reason how I met her is because my program of research is in music and health. And I was Googling folks who are doing this work, and Julene's name popped up. And I applied to UCSF just because of mainly Julene being there. And I got into the PhD program there, and we spoke on the phone, and you sounded so nice and welcoming. And you said, you know, the only caveat is that my grant is in review. And if you know anything about NIH funding, I didn't know anything about NIH funding at that point. She said, you know, it's like 50-50, maybe actually like more like 20-80. And, you know, like we're not sure on this. And so, and me being from the East Coast, it was like, do I take this gamble and move to the West Coast, pay a lot out of pocket to be studying with Julene? And unfortunately, just financially, I just couldn't make that decision, right? So I stayed at Penn. And then, but throughout these years, like every time I would reach out to Julene, I think others have talked about this too, is the fact that you're always available, and you're the only person from my mentoring team who replies back to me and says, yes, I'm available. How about next week? And I think that is just cannot be understated. I feel like with other mentors, you always have to kind of beg for their time and attention, but you give it so freely. And I really appreciate that. And I think you and I share the bond of music and health, and both of us being musicians. And I think I don't have any other mentors who I share that sort of bond with. And then the last comment I was going to make, so I got married in 2013, and I had an opportunity to come up to San Francisco to be involved in the Community of Voices project. And it happened to be that the days that you had available was like right after my wedding. Well, guess what? I got married, and then like 3 days later, I left my husband newly married to go work with Julene, and just to show that I was like, this is not going to come around again. I must go. And so he still remembers it. He ended up flying to San Francisco to meet me for like our pseudo honeymoon. But I think I just told him how excited I was that like this was never a moment. And so I did it. So I thought that was a really fun story. I just remembered.
Dorina, I had no idea.
Well, it's not something you want to advertise like freely. He was fine. We're fine. We're still married. Okay. And then the last thing I just wanted to comment, I think when I was thinking about finding a faculty position, I couldn't turn to, and I felt like I could turn to you and say, hey, what do you think? I'm not really movable. Like, where should I go? I feel so limited in my options. And I think you helped me. You told me like, you can do this. You can find something that not only will help you in your career and you'll flourish. And so I really appreciated that insight. So having a person from outside of my institution to me has been really, not pun intended, instrumental in my success. So congratulations.
Thank you, Dorina. Judy Paul might have heard that same advice. Right, Judy?
Yes, Julene was very helpful when I was thinking about next steps in faculty and where to go and what made sense both professionally and personally. So I see that advice is carried on and helped others, which is amazing. Sometimes it just takes that mentor who believes in you and gives you that little nudge and says, no, go, you can do it. Go ahead and give it a shot. And it oftentimes works out.
Clearly, Professor Johnson has some mentoring superpowers. People call with new babies, new spouses, birds are coming to the windowsill in her office. It's like a Disney movie. I'm really impressed. And I think I see a hand up from Jackie Eaton as well.
Yes, congratulations, Julene. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. I'm from Utah. And I just had to tell you this little story. I was putting together I was a new, fresh tenure line assistant professor at the University of Utah, putting together a committee to submit a KO1, a mentoring committee. And I pulled together people that I knew in my local university, and everyone's like, okay, Jackie, who do you have that's arts-based? Because my research is arts-based research. And I gave a few examples and they're like, Jackie, you need someone at the national level. And I'm like, I don't know anyone. And I knew of people though, and I had been following Julene for a few years. I teach an Aging in the Arts class, and I have students read her publication on community-based arts research that she did with the National Endowment for the Arts. And so we made a plan, and I reached out to her via email thinking she would just dump it. It would go straight to spam, because I was thinking, I bet Julene gets 1,000 of these emails a day. And I kept it short and sweet, but I let her know why she was the only person who could help me. And within, I think, a day, maybe more, but my memory tells me within a day, I received an email back that just said, hey, let's talk by phone. And my jaw dropped to the floor. I could not believe it. And within a few days, we were on the phone talking, and I was telling her about my work, and she was listening. And I was able to get her to come out and guest lecture at the University of Utah. And she said yes to mentoring and being a co-mentor on my K Award. And not only has she mentored me, but she's mentored the entire faculty on my mentoring team. I've watched it over and over again, where we're all like, oh, okay, that's a great strategy. And I work in a college of nursing, but I have a background in theater. And I never imagined that I would be able to work my way towards a K Award. And a big part of that has been Julene's belief and the time that she has given to mentoring me and my research team. And the other thing I wanted to add was, I have loved this process of meeting her other mentees. I have not met any of you in person except Dorina many years ago, but I know you through email, and one of the things Julene does so well is encourage us to share what we've learned and share our resources with one another. And so I just am saying, Julene, I think we need to plan a big sing in the future for when we can all get together. And I want to come to California and meet everyone in person at the big sing. So anyway, congratulations, Julene. This has been so fun hearing all the stories, and thank you for the time that you've given to all of us.
Thank you, Jackie. That was terrific.
Fantastic. Any last comments? Well, all right. Again,
I'm sorry, I had a comment. Julene,
Sure.
how do you do it? What's your secret?
Well, I think I told you, I get enormous joy, inspiration, meaning, and I learn. I mean, who would not make time for that in your life? That's really what I get out of mentoring. You know, and I don't do it because you know, that's what I get, but that's the result of all of the relationships with you amazing people and many, many others too. And I carry that and I pass it on, just like Anita Stewart passes on her wisdom to me. I just pass it along. That's kind of what you do. So I think I don't have a better answer. Just love it.
all right. Wonderful comments for all of our honorees today. Again, I'd just like to take these last few moments to thank Vanya and Andrew and Julene. You are the best of the university, and clearly your mentees and your trainees really value what you do, as do your colleagues. So congratulations again. We're really proud of you, and I hope you've enjoyed being feted today in this Zoom format, and hopefully someday we will all be in the same place at the same time again. But in the meantime, I think the comments that people have given definitely demonstrate the wonderful impact that you all have. So thank you again.
And thank you. And I want to say thank you to the Institute for Health and Aging for the beautiful flowers. And apparently there's a dinner that's going to be delivered at 6 p.m. tonight. So I definitely feel the love. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. All right, Amber, anything else to close it out today?
Oh, that'll be it. Thank you so much, everyone. And congratulations again to all the awardees. And thank you, Steve, for hosting this event.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Congratulations, Julene.